And welcome to today's podcast. It is, and I think I've now said this at least 1 year, probably 2 years straight. This is my favorite episode of the year. Probably one that is not your favorite unless you're a diehard baseball fan, because professional sports announcer, Walleye and Hens broadcaster, play-by-play guy, analyst Matt Melzak will be on for the next hour or so. Now, to avoid you from dipping out and not listening to 83% of this podcast, if you were here this time last year, you knew that Matt was on the precipice of being a dad. So we're going to start with Matt Melzak, professional sports broadcaster, Matt Melzak, becoming professional dad 11 months into the dad experiment in just a moment. First up, you may have seen Tony Geftos' story. Tony from 13 ABC did a story about, over the last month, a thief or thieves, all similarly dressed in like athleisure gym attire like me. It wasn't me. Walking out with big TVs on the Best Buy on Monroe. Just walking out. There's pictures of these dudes carrying the TVs on their heads, and I want to know more. I did find out a little bit more, but nothing I can really share, nothing that would actually add to this story at all. And I know that theft has been up in these COVID times for a variety of reasons. Maybe there are not necessarily the consequences that there was or could be when it comes to a police presence, because we have some pretty violent things happening, and someone shoplifting at Walgreens is just not something that they can address. And when people find that out, they continue to shoplift, or other people hear that and they continue to shoplift. And oh yeah, by the way, a lot of these people might not even be bad people, but they can barely put food on their table because we have inflation, and they can barely afford to live. So they're willing to set their morals and ethics aside, and they're going to steal. Even these people that are taking the TVs, maybe instead of taking food, they're taking the TVs because they know they can take them and they can sell them for a lot so they can put food on their table. I'm not defending them. I'm just giving you a very valid reason why stuff like this is happening. The other side of it is, I've known for many years now, and maybe even more so recently, employees, and maybe you know better than me because you might be one, they're told don't engage with these people. And if you know that you're not going to be engaged with or stopped, you're more likely to just walk out with stuff. Maybe there are employees who dislike their job, and they are encouraged to say, hey, sir or ma'am, can I help you with that? Maybe raise the voice, put these people on alert and go, wink, wink, we know what you're up to. But maybe they're exasperated with their working situation and their boss or their pay, and they go, it ain't worth $13.27 an hour for me to stop this person in case they pull a gun, a knife, decide to knock me the hell out. So I do tongue-in-cheek, somewhat sarcastically and cynically here, for the stuff happening at Best Buy. If you are going to continue to do this, I ask you if you would be a bit more audacious. Ask for a store employee to help you out. Like, let's just see how much you can get away with. Again, I say that very tongue-in-cheek. He's new dad, 11-month-old, who's just starting to come into our personality. Let's talk to professional dad and professional sports broadcaster, my good friend Matt Melzak from the Walleye, the Mud Hens, and Kenlin and Caitlin. Dad, can I call you Dad?
Yes, you could.
It's good to hear your voice.
Likewise, man.
Happy almost opening day.
Very true, right? It's crazy.
Are you tired? Is Kenlin time wearing you out?
No, it's good. She's napping right now, so I'm trying to be a little quieter, right? So
not possible
for me. You know it.
Well, this is my very favorite podcast of the year. I look forward to our chats.
I love it. Me too. It's fun. I enjoy it.
Kenlin is it 10 months?
She's 11 months
11
now.
Months. Has having a newborn, an infant, been easier to manage with your schedule because it's so unconventional, or that much more challenging?
I would say that much more challenging, just because of, like, early on, it was the odd sleep schedule for her and the constant wake ups, that happened in the first few months. And then we were in the playoffs, right, too, for hockey and baseball going. So I don't know if I slept more than 2 or 3 hours at a time and for months at the most. But, now that she sleeps through the night, it's a little bit easier. But, I'm still coming and going at weird hours. So, yeah, I guess it is a bit of a challenge, but it's been a good one.
What did you do to get through the days, the long hours at work with 2 hours of sleep?
Coffee's a nice friend. And I think when you look at, how you go through when you're preparing and you're constantly going, once you're going, you're used to it. And you can get through. I've always found, for me, I can always get through a day, because obviously I've had a weird schedule for, 15 years. So, I would get in at, 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd be up by 6 or 7 anyway, even pre-Kenlin. And then I would just go all day. And then just, that next night I would catch up. And it took a while to catch up. Let's put it that way.
Did you hit a wall at any point where maybe you tried to stand up and you just couldn't, or you're on the call with Weber and words just didn't come out?
Weber might have got into a story once in a while where I probably don't remember the story, because I probably might have dozed off a little bit. But, I think for the most part, it wasn't as bad, because, my wife, Caitlin, who is, she's great on some of that too. So if we had a really busy week and I was getting home way late at night, she'd take a shift here and there and help out so that I could get maybe 4 hours of sleep, just to, at a certain stretch, right? You'd still get your sleep. Like, I would get up at, maybe 2 in the morning with her, feed her, she would go back to sleep, and then I would go back to sleep. So, I just didn't have more. I might have had 4 or 5 hours, but it was just always broken up. And
right,
your body is amazing at how it adjusts. I think people, you don't think about it that much, but so many people have children, and then they get used to how that works and how that operates, and your body adjusts. And then all of a sudden, after a month or so, you sleep 2 hours here, 2 hours here, 2 hours here, and all of a sudden your body is adjusted and says, you know what, we got our 6 hours, we're good, let's go. And you go all day, and then, and then you do it again the next night. It's amazing what the body can do, and you learn a lot about it when you have a kid.
I think being that's where the parental DNA takes over, because you don't have a choice. I remember there were some times in my career where I was briefly on a split shift where I would do the mornings really early, go home, and then have to come back in the afternoon. And I felt like my appendages were leaving my body. I felt so disoriented.
Right. But again, though, after a while, your body was like, oh, this is our routine. And it's amazing what the body can do and how it can handle things. And, now it's weird when, we go through a lot of nights where she sleeps right through. I mean, last night's a great example. She went to sleep at 8:30. She didn't get up till 8 this morning. We'd never heard from her. It was an amazing thing. But then once in a while, she'll have a night where she struggles. And then all of a sudden at 1 or 2 in the morning, she's yelling out, and you wake up, even if you don't go in, and you let her figure it out and get back to sleep, you still wake up, you're up, what's she doing? You're looking at the monitor, all those things. And then all of a sudden you're really tired that next day because your body's been like, well, we've been sleeping. What is going on here now? We've switched back to the normal schedule. And, but you adjust. It's amazing. And I can't speak for other people, but I know how mine has been. And it's just amazing how the body can adjust to all these things.
You said looking at the monitor, and I immediately flashed to what you have done for most of your adult life. Do you ever look at the monitor and have that feeling like you're actually looking at the monitor on the ice for a replay or something like that?
It is kind of weird because, yes, I have done so much looking at replays over my life that it is pretty crazy to think about, and I look at a monitor to see if she's taking a nap or sleeping or, if she's up or whatever. It is, sometimes I watch, sometimes you just watch. No, she's sleeping, you just watch it.
Do you ever want to do a play-by-play of it? Does that instinct kick in?
No, not really, actually. And even when I'm hanging with her, like today I am, I don't do much of that. But it is kind of funny a couple of nights when we've been on the TV side and, Caitlin will throw the game on and Kenlin will see me on the screen and she'll stop what she's doing to watch and see what I'm doing and listens to it. And I've had her to a couple of games now where she's been in the booth and, she wants to play with the microphone so much. But, hey, it's kind of neat and it's really a cool experience. Something I wish I had done earlier in my life. But, I'm really happy that it's it now and that I have her.
What's been your favorite part so far of being a dad?
I think watching her develop and grow, and now the things she's learning, of where things are at and, how to do things. And now now she crawls everywhere, but she can pull herself up on everything. She walks around the coffee table, like just watching the development of her as, especially the last couple months as, she's starting to figure it out and that personality's starting to come out for her. It's been really cool.
I've had that a little bit with my niece as well as my brother and his girl keep me up to date with things because the first 3 or 4 months or whatever it is, it's like, yeah, it just kind of sits there, eats and poops and sleeps. And then all of a sudden, like the smiles come out and the giggles and they start to like things or dislike things. So I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it is really cool and watching her because, we're to that point where she's eating some regular food now and we're trying different things with her. And it's just kind of fun to watch that development, and it really is a cool thing. It is awesome to see her, really try something new, and then to see her face. Oh, she likes it. She's eating more. Okay, great. And those things that or she figures out a new toy a new part to a toy even. Oh, this used to play music. I figured out that this button plays it different. It's just that watching her figure things out is just really cool.
What's her favorite food?
She doesn't really have one right now. We have not, knock on wood, we have not run into anything that she has not liked so far. So, we're doing good on that side.
Does she have a favorite character or anything yet?
No, not any of that yet. No, she doesn't even, she'll look at the, TV if it's on once in a while, but she doesn't really pay too much attention to it. She's kind of in her own little world and likes to play with, her toys and stuff. And she's really into the music stuff right now, where she can play things and press buttons and it changes tunes and, does things like that. We found even a little like TV remote for her that plays music and does different languages too. So she, presses like the 5 and it says 5, and then if she presses a different button, it does it in Spanish, it does it in French. It's kind of funny watching her just kind of work on it,
Well, good. Congratulations. I'm glad everything is going well. 11 months into this. Well, beyond, I guess, 20 months or so into this whole project.
Yeah, it is a project. I think that's a good way to put it. And, I think it's something that, I hope everyone gets a chance to experience one day in their life because it's really cool.
I have not met my niece yet. I was going to go home over the holidays, but we got that one big storm and I didn't want to risk the turnpike. And I said to my brother, I was like, well, can Noelle and I FaceTime? And he said, she's a starer. Like when strangers come, she's a starer. I'm like, that's totally fine, Paul. I'll sit and stare at her until we both fall asleep.
See, that's fantastic. I've done a few FaceTimes when I've been on the road with Kenlin, and all she does is push the screen, and all of a sudden she'll take weird photos of me on the other end of it, and then she hangs up after a while when she figures out that button.
Let's swing over. So
okay.
for the first half of the season, third of the season, it's like nothing I've ever experienced, and I'm sure you as well, since I've been following walleye hockey. Like this team was stuck in the mud like never before. And then I'll ask you the other half of that question: why the slow start, especially when they had so many familiar faces back?
It just wasn't the right mix, I think. It just, we weren't scoring goals and we were allowing too many. Just, it felt like, even if we would hold teams to shots, into the 20s or something, we'd still give up 4 goals. And I think there was a lot of different factors into that. A, I don't think our defense was as great. And B, our goaltending was young and learning. And those things sometimes can't go hand in hand, as you know, Eric. They're not good to go hand in hand there. You either have to have a really strong decor. If you got young goalies that are, in Cosa's case, young goalie, John Lethman coming off of a surgery over the summer, so he hadn't really had a training camp, and we didn't really see him until November anyway. So when you factor those things in, we were I mean, the stats wise told you we were giving up 3.5 goals a game. We were only scoring 2.5. You were just going to lose games, and some of those games we even played well enough to win, and it just didn't happen for us. And then you hit the new year, and really, actually, it started around Christmas time. Dan was able to add a defenseman, by the name of Riley McCord, who was coming off an injury and had nowhere to play, and Toledo ends up getting him in, and then Charlie Curdy, same thing. Guys that were coming off of injuries, or in Curdy's case, he was overseas and comes back, and then those two went into our lineup, and all of a sudden we got better defensively. And then we started to win some games because our offense started coming along. We got some guys down from the American League, Tutayev, Warad, Bliss, and all of a sudden everything started, that mix started to click. And then you started winning games, and we started really winning in January, and then all of a sudden the players were like, oh, you know what, this defensive style of hockey that, Dan wants us to play, Dan wants, and, it works. We actually limit teams' scoring, and we end up scoring a lot of goals. And sometimes, even when you have returning guys, sometimes they get into roles that they're not great and then they don't produce at the same level, and then, then all of a sudden they get dialed back into a different role, the normal role, and it works for them. And I think that mix just wasn't right at the beginning of the year, and it started to click in January, and you could see the difference now.
It had to be fun and a good feeling for other teams around the league. They could finally beat up the Walleye after being beaten up by the Walleye for so many years. And then, again, like you've described, that switch flipped after Christmas. And since then, have they lost more than 3 games?
Actually, no. It's been really crazy. Matter of fact, only one. You go back to mid-January. I think it was January 14th off the top of my head when Toledo lost 7-4 to Fort Wayne at home. And, at that point we were, I think, 4-2 or something in January. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It's been a couple of months, There's a lot that's happened since then. But since that point, Toledo lost on January 27th to Cincinnati in regulation 4-2. They lost in overtime at Cincinnati on February 3rd, 5-4 in a shootout, actually. And maybe the longest hockey game not to go to overtime in non-playoff history. That 3 hours and 20 minutes, I still remember it because it was miserable. But so those are the only 2 times Toledo has not had a victory. Going all the way back to mid-January. It's crazy.
18 straight wins, right?
Yes. And 18-0-1 in their last 20, going back to that loss January 27th in regulation to Cincy.
This calendar year has been something completely different from the beginning of the season. What that's a team record. Is there an ECHL or minor league record for wins consecutively?
There is an ECHL record, is 23. Okay. That was set by South Carolina in 2015. Matter of fact, they actually beat Toledo in one of those games. They actually came through Toledo there in late March, and they were still winning games, and they won, and then they lost a couple games after that. Is when they actually had their streak end. It was 23 straight, so still 5 away from that mark for Toledo. And then on the road side, we've won 11 straight there, which is second to South Carolina. South Carolina won 13 in that stretch. Unfortunately, we only have one road game left, so we can't catch them on that regard. However, this team can set a new ECHL record if they win that game in Kalamazoo on April 14th. As now would be the most wins on the road ever in ECHL history. They're tied right now. There's 4 other teams reached 26. Toledo's at 26 right now, so could still set a record yet.
Yeah, this is a historic season and kind of surprising if after, again, the way they started stuck in neutral. So forecast a little bit. I'm still waiting for my parade up, down, left, right on Summit or Washington. They keep getting so darn close. What does this team's outlook look like going towards the playoffs?
Well, I think it's going to depend a little bit. I mean, I love the way they're playing defensively, but, it's really changed from February to March, okay? In February, our average score was 5-1. You were scoring a ton of goals, not giving up any. They're still only allowing a goal to a goal and a half a game right now in March. The difference is that goals for has dropped to, between 3 and 4. So, I mean, I think you're going to need, and it helps that Grand Rapids and Detroit looks like they, obviously aren't going to be playoff teams. So now, you have that possibility of getting Drew Warrad and Trenton Bliss and Kirill Tutayev back offensively. If those things happen, then I think you have a very good outlook. I think right now it's good, but I think it gets so much better if you get those guys back. Plus, hopefully you get a Mitchell Hurd back, who's done well for Belleville in the American Hockey League. Hopefully you get Riley McCourt back, who's up right now in the American Hockey League with Colorado. As long as you can get those guys back in and you don't lose anyone to big injuries going forward, because you're going to get TJ Hensick in here soon, whether it's this weekend or next. He's going to have to start getting into some games here soon. So you're going to get him back into the lineup, and get him going, which will be very helpful. I think the outlook is good. It just gets way better if you get those guys back out of the American League. They're
a point behind Cincinnati in their division. Wow, Idaho has 99 points. Is there? Do they have a new rivalry with Cincinnati? For in the years past, it's been Fort Wayne. Who do they really? This calendar year, the answer is no one. But who have they really struggled with recently?
Cincinnati's been the team. Well, I mean, if you look at it, as I mentioned earlier, that, the only 2 losses that they've had since mid-January were to Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's got a very good team. They're solid everywhere. They could score. They're good defensively. I think their goaltending is probably the only spot that's a little, iffy. But Beck Warm's been playing better down there because they're on a heater too. I mean, Toledo's won 18 in a row. They've won, unbeaten in regulation in 20 straight. And like you said, you just mentioned it, they're still a point behind Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Because Cincinnati hasn't lost in regulation like 16 games. So, they're rolling too, and they still have a game in hand on Toledo. So, the task it's still tall to finish in first in the division. It can be done. The 2 teams do play each other on April 7th in Toledo, so that could be a massive game for who wins the division.
Next week is going to be really fun. I can't recall since I've been here, there's going to be a triple-double header, because assuming there's no weather creations with the Mud Hens, but we got ball games every day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then hockey games as well.
Yeah, you know what? I can't think of a time either where we've had that match up so perfectly like this. But we are starting early for baseball, right?
Yeah.
We've never had games in March in Toledo, and we're going to have one of those on March 31st at 4 o'clock. And then you're right. You're going to go 7 o'clock hockey, 4 o'clock on Saturday baseball, 7 o'clock hockey, and then 2 o'clock Sunday baseball, 5 o'clock hockey. So, yeah, it is going to be a massive weekend in downtown Toledo, maybe the biggest we've seen in a long time.
And by the time Monday rolls around, I can't imagine how bloodshot your eyes will be.
My eyes will be bloodshot, and we'll see if I even have a voice left. No, I won't do all of the baseball games that weekend. I'll do the home opener. I'll probably, just do hockey on Saturday and maybe only hockey on Sunday. So, I'll kind of back off a little bit, or at least I'll go over and just do part of the baseball game. So, just got to keep, I'm the main play-by-play guy, right, for hockey. We have the Hall of Famer, Jim Weber, for baseball. So, I can relax a little bit on the baseball side.
We're doing the show live. We're doing my afternoon show live from 12 to 3 next Friday at Paco. So stop on by, please.
Okay, we'll make sure I make that a priority to get over there.
Before we swing all the way over to Hens and baseball stuff, which I think we both love these conversations, tell me a little bit about your partner in a lot of the telecasts, Kendall.
Yeah, Kendall's been great. She's obviously local. She came out of Sylvania Southview, played goal there, went to Bowling Green, played on their women's team down there, again, goalie. And she's got a very good mind as far as the sport of hockey goes, and right now it's developing her on the broadcast side. She really wants to be a next great analyst in hockey, and she definitely has the mindset for it. She's got the desire to do it, and it's just that development that she's going through right now, especially early in your broadcast career. There's a lot of stumbling blocks and things that you have to overcome, and she's working on those. She's got a bright future, I think.
Yeah, she's good people, and I like her dad as well. I'm glad that
fantastic.
I'm glad she could matriculate like the way that you talked about, how a local girl, and then maybe she'll be up at the Red Wings one day or somebody else.
Yeah, it could be amazing. I think the sky's the limit for her. She has that drive. that you have to have, and she's really talented. She is very talented. You could see it in certain spots when we're doing games. You can really tell she's got a lot of talent.
Let's swing over to Mud Hens. What does this season portend for them? Last year at this time, we were trying to talk about all these hot prospects that were not likely to start with the Tigers, and we can come back to the Tigers in a second. We have a new manager this year. It's not Lloyd McClendon, although who knows? Lloyd could just show up back again. Bit of a different leadership for this team. What does 2023 look like for the Mud Hens?
Well, I think one thing you have is, yes, you're right. New manager Anthony Iapoce is going to take over. I've talked to him a couple of times now. He's a younger guy. I think he's got a lot of bright ideas, and I think he's a very good baseball mind. He comes out of the Boston organization. He's been a hitting coach at the major league level with the Cubs years ago. So, he's got that. The one thing he does not have is a lot of managerial experience, so that'll be new for him. A little bit, but one thing he has is some stability with the staff. When you look, Tony Capicelli is back as the bench coach. Those guys are very key now in baseball. You got Doug Bachler back, as the pitching coach. You have Mike Hessman returning to Toledo as the hitting coach. There's just a lot of familiarity with that organization and that group of people there that, Anthony told me when I chatted with him a couple months ago. He said, you know what, I'm going to lean on those guys, especially early guys that, have an idea of how it goes in AAA every day. He was more of a roving hitting guy with the Boston Red Sox last year, although he was with Worcester when they played in Toledo. So he's already familiar with our ballpark, which is nice. And but I think that's where it starts. I think you got a great group there. There's a reason why the Tigers, even with a new GM and kind of a new staff in place in a lot of areas, decided to keep those guys still with Toledo.
Yes,
that tells you a lot.
We last year at this time we were talking about Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson and some of the young pitchers, and then they were either bad or got hurt. So I know last year we were very positive about the Tigers, and like the Baez signing didn't really work out. But I'm just going to chalk it up to like everybody that they wanted to count on got hurt at the same time, mostly in the pitching. So what are some players to look forward to on the Mud Hens this year, and then guys that might go back up and forth between Detroit and here, and then guys that'll be on rehab stints at some point?
I'll tell you what, it's crazy right now, but I mean, we're a week and a half away from having, the opening day, and we're still trying to piece together a roster right now for the Mud Hens. And it happens a lot this time of year because guys are still on the big league side, not quite sure who's going to be sent down, although we know Alex Faedo is going to probably start with us. Brendan Davis, who was with us last year, is going to start with us. Those two were reassigned down yesterday to the minor league camp, so they'll be in Toledo. So there's at least a few familiar names there. I think you're going to look at more of a veteran club this year because a lot of the prospect side are down further in the Tigers organization this year. I think interesting to see a few of those guys that they're brought in that could be here. I know they picked up a catcher that was with Milwaukee's organization last year, who I think we could see in Toledo that could be interesting. A guy that goes up and down maybe, although he's still with the Tigers, he could make their club for all we know. There's some guys that I think will be interesting to keep an eye on, and it'll be interesting to watch this group. I think Andre Lipsius is another guy that's had a really strong spring. Can he make the Tigers out of camp? I don't know. Or will they go with more of a veteran guy like Cesar Hernandez that's there? And maybe they send Lipsius to us so he continues to get full-time at bats. He did well in his short stint with Toledo last year. They may want to see him have another run in Toledo and see if he can keep going what he's done in spring, because he's been a very good hitter for the Tigers down there in Lakeland.
I am extremely excited, and I wasn't we talked about this last year, I wasn't for all the rule changes, but I am very excited for them because I think we got a glimpse of it when Scherzer was out there for like his first or second start in Florida a couple weeks ago. There's going to be some zaniness. You have very smart people who are going to find some unintended consequences in these rules, and we're going to see things that we've never imagined before on a baseball field.
I think you're 100% right. Guys will find a way to skirt the rules, so to speak, right? They're gonna try to find a way to make it work for them. Whether it's going to be a pitcher that knows, a batter that doesn't like to stand in right away, and he's going to get set quickly and try to deliver a pitch as fast as possible to try to catch a hitter off guard, or you're going to have a hitter that's going to say, well, this guy likes to work quick, so I'm going to try to slowly try to set up and make sure I'm still tapping the plate, not quite ready to go. There's going to be some interesting little things that get done, but I've seen the rules for the obviously the last couple of years in minor leagues. I think they're a good thing, and I think it's going to speed up the game of baseball. And as these guys, once they get over the, I can't believe we're doing this, once they get settled into this is the way baseball is going to be, I think it'll start to settle down a little bit on that end, and you'll see the game actually speed up. And that's the thing. It's not, everybody talks about the time of the game, Eric. It's not about the time of the game. It's about the action. How to get the pace going. Yes. Yeah, just to get to the action plays more quickly. It's not that the time of the game is that big a deal, although it has been basically a 3-hour game every year for years now. And you go back to the 80s, it was 2 hours and 20 minutes to play a game. And that's it with nobody changing anything. And, I think they need to find a way to get back to that. And some of it is, like the rule that you had to face 3 batters last year unless an inning came to an end, that added to a little bit of speed to it because guys were getting changed left and right. And all these pitching changes were slowing the game down so much, and then to the point where it's just dragging. And I think you need to have that pace. And I'm in favor of it, and I'm a younger person, obviously, like you, and you're in favor of it. And then when Jim Weber's been in favor of this, that's when I know we're probably on the right track because he wants to see the game go faster too.
He has tee times. He has chunks waiting for him at Dirty Bird. So absolutely, yeah. The one that you didn't mention that I think is going to cause all the squirreliness is only 2 pickoffs, and then you have to either get the guy or he gets the base. I think you're going to see some weird stuff with that.
Yeah, you could. Although I do like the rule because it's going to promote guys moving along more, and it adds that element of the game that has been kind of missing the last few years. I mean, you got nobody that steals bases anymore, Eric. Yeah. They just sit on first waiting to be moved along. Well, now a guy like, this is weird that I'm going to bring this name up, but a guy like Asturi, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, Asturi Ruiz for Oakland, who's a speed guy. He gets on base and he's speed guy.
Yeah, he just ran about on the bases last year like a T-ball kid because he had so much speed. I think he stole like 70 or 80 bases across all the levels he was at.
Yeah, he's unbelievably fast. And now, granted, I don't know if he's a great enough hitter to really make a huge difference. But if he gets on base, you know what? He can also be a guy you carry for late innings. He gets on base. He steals you second. He could steal you third. All of a sudden, if you need a run, it's an important part of the game again, and it's going to put a premium on, like you said, yes, it could be some zaniness with it, but let's face it, there were a lot of times where guys threw over to first base with no intention of ever picking off the guy.
Right. Yeah.
It was a token toss to slow things down, and that's what you need to have out of the game.
And I'd like to see like a guy like that because this is where I think you'll have like these games of chicken where somebody like that facing maybe somebody who isn't comfortable like throwing over that often. Like I remember how John Lester was afraid to throw over.
Sure.
Where Asturi Ruiz or some speed demon out there, Billy Hamilton 2K23 is going to take like a 15-foot lead and dare you to throw over. I think we're going to see some real strategy with that this year.
It also might bring the pickoff actually back into the game more. And the reason why I say that is because you're right. Guys are going to try to push the lead a little more because they used to take a lead knowing you're just going to token toss over. You're not really going to try to stop him. And it could make guys that, have been, there's always, everybody gets a base or two here and there. I mean, even Carlos Santana and some other guys will steal a base here and there because they'll catch you snoozing, right? Over the course of a long season. Even Miguel Cabrera's got some steals in his career, But now you could have those guys that might steal, 5 to 15 bases a year. They would just catch the right time to go. Maybe those guys become 20 to 25 stolen base guys. that adds a little bit more into the game. Now you're getting more action into the game. You're making more strategy into the game. When do guys go? I think it's a great thing. I think the game was getting so stale that they needed to do something, and we've seen it the last couple of years in AAA, and it adds to the game. Even the bigger bases, I know it doesn't seem like it's a lot. It's a few inches. But you know what? It also is for safety, and the fact that it's going to promote more stolen bases, which adds more action into the game, and it means a team that doesn't have to be a home run team to win, and that's where the baseball has gotten so home run heavy that everybody swings for the fences. Well, those guys you don't have to have 9 hitters that swing for the fences all the time. You can have an Asturi Ruiz on your roster.
You and I, this was not our team, but we are certainly of the era of the mid-'80s Cardinals, who barely hit any home runs and got to a World Series, I believe. But the Vince Colemans, the William McGee's, these disciples of Ricky Henderson, where they just matriculated around the bases because they were such speed demons. I'm sure if you took like a 30-year-old kid or a 30-year-old guy or a 25-year-old baseball fan and showed some of these baseball cards from like 1980, something they've never heard of, and go, yeah, that guy stole 63 bases that year, they wouldn't believe it.
Right, exactly, because it's been such a lost part of the game. Everything's about home runs and strikeouts. That's it. That's the way the game is boiled down to now in the last couple of years. It's like we've lost half of the game. And they're trying to find a way to do it. Well, maybe in a year or two they might go, hey, these rules just aren't working. We got to go back to getting rid of this, for the pickoff rule, because too many guys are getting that third pickoff and they're getting the second base easily. Maybe they will find that's not necessary. I just after seeing it last year in AAA, that the pickoff rule, I don't think it's going to change it as much. It's just going to promote a little bit more running. And that's not a bad thing. More action is a good thing.
Let me ask you this. I saw someone write it up back in the fall and haven't seen much more of it. With pitchers having to work quicker. So one of the things, I don't know how much more action we're going to see on face value, because if guys are still throwing all the filthy stuff they are and the strike zone is as is, if they can't hit it, there won't be any action. We haven't really moved anything forward. But I do wonder if pitchers being forced to work quicker and not always use 100% of their delivery because they've got to save something in the tank, some of those pitches will go from 98 and filthy to maybe 96 with a little less movement, making things more hittable. Basically saying these guys might be a little bit more fatigued and it might be easier to hit. Is there any validity to any of that?
I would think it would be possible, yes, because you're not standing out there forever, getting a ton of rest in between every pitch. So you can't max velocity all the time. You've got to be a little bit quicker. Although I think as we go along, Eric, when you look, the pitch clock's been in the minor leagues now for a couple of years. So you have a lot of guys that are already used to it. Matter of fact, it's a second quicker at the minor league level. So you got guys that, are making big league debuts that are going to be like, this is the same as what I've been pitching in AAA or AA, or single A. So as we go along, it's going to be rough for the guys that have been major leaguers like a Scherzer that's been a major leaguer for 10 years, hasn't been in the minor leagues for anything. And when he goes in a minor league, he's on a rehab, he doesn't have a pitch clock, right? So, because they didn't have it in the major league level. Now, it'll take them a little while to figure that out, and they might have to, adjust how they do things. But the minor league guys, the guys that are coming up, the guys that will be making their major league debuts this year or last year, or guys that have been used to pitching with a pitch clock, it's not going to bother them too much, and I don't think you would have that same issue. I think as we go along in the next probably 5 to 10 years, if it all stays, which I think it will, I think you're going to see that not even become a factor anymore.
So guys are going to continue to throw harder and harder with filthier stuff, and the strikeouts will just continue, and it doesn't matter what side of second base you're on because you can't hit it anyway.
Well, that's true too. But you know what? How many guys can really throw it that hard and control it constantly? Too.
More than ever. Did you see this kid from the Angels the other day? The kid from Tennessee, 104?
Yes. 104. I did see that. It's insane, and but then again, you also got to look at how many pitchers are getting hurt now too, and I don't know if there's a correlation to that. When you're throwing that hard and that much max effort all the time, is that causing a guy to get hurt more often? Where you look at, a guy like Mark Burley for the White Sox, who doesn't throw overly hard, but he can get it up there. But yet he's had a very long career because he doesn't throw max effort all the time. Even Justin Verlander never threw max effort until he really needed it.
Right.
He was always a guy who would sit, he'd start a game in the first inning, he'd be at 92, 91. And then, maybe by the fifth or sixth, as he got loose, he would be, he could throw 94, 95, and maybe even 98. These guys don't, and he's had a long career. So, maybe pitchers need to look at some of that too and go, you know what? If I throw 94 more often than 98, is my career going to last longer? But maybe you can't get guys out at 94. Maybe you got to go to 98 to get guys out, and then you just go with it. But I think you got to watch that too, because I think guys are going to be getting injured because of the fact you are using max effort all the time.
Yeah, it's something that we need. I know Tom Verducci did one of those studies years ago about innings jumps and things like that. We could use something like that because there were people that kept track of all the rotator cuff injuries and the elbow stuff. And now it's something to watch. And again, I just see this anecdotally from reading stories. It seems like we have a lot of side and core issues with hitters because they're doing max things on their end with the torque of the body. So now that we've developed all these great aspects to get the most out of the human body, we've got to, as you said, keep these people healthy because it's not worth anything if you can't stay out there.
That's very true as well. But you know what? In a player, you got to look at it from a player's perspective. If I'm a pitcher and I know if I can have one or two really good years, I'm going to get paid, right? I'm going to get big money. If I'm a hitter, if I can put together 2 or 3 really good years, I'm going to get paid. And, especially if you're a minor leaguer, I need to get to this. Yeah. How am I going to get to the big league level? If I'm a guy in AAA and I throw 94 and I have trouble getting guys out, but if I throw 97 or 98, all of a sudden I get guys out, I get to the big league level, it's a lot more money.
Yep.
So, I mean, you from a player's side, I totally get it. You want to get to that level and you want to be able to stay. And, it's a fine line. It really is, Eric. It's a tough one. I mean, we all love seeing it. I mean, didn't you like seeing that guy from the Angels throwing 104? Who doesn't like that? When Chapman came around and he was throwing every pitch at 101, 102, you were like, man, this guy's a freak. This is awesome. We love this. Guys hitting a bunch of home runs. Aaron Judge last year hitting all those home runs. You're like, man, this is great. It's great for the game. And there's the pros and the cons of it. Obviously, unfortunately, we've talked about some of the cons today, but there's also the pros to it of how great the game can be when those guys are performing at such a high level.
Is there something, aside from the rules, a team, a player, a storyline, the end of Miguel Cabrera that you're looking forward to in the sport in general this season?
I think the Cabrera thing's a great line as well, and I want to see if some of these other teams that are close. Like the Baltimore Orioles have so many young prospects that are really good. Is that going to translate to them making that next jump? They did very well last year. Is it going to make to that where they're able to make that big jump? I think is a great storyline. I want to see if some of these teams can compete on a consistent basis again, like Tampa, who doesn't spend a lot of money. Are they going to still be able to field a team that's going to be competitive in a playoff team? Can they do that? Because the way baseball's gone, I feel like, some teams just are, they have to either hit home runs with all their prospects hitting at the right time, or they're not going to be able to compete like the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds are a team that is, unless they have everybody going at the same time, all these prospects, they're not going to compete. Pittsburgh is the same way. And I just want to see some of those teams, can they find that balance to compete on a consistent basis and get back up there? I think Seattle's done a great job. They're going to be a great story this year to see if they can compete with Houston this year in that division. I have a former Hens manager, Phil Nevin, full-time guy now with the Angels. Los Angeles out there, so let's see how he does this year with Trout and Ohtani. They have a pretty decent roster going into the year, so they could be a surprise team a little bit in the American League. And in the NL, can anyone compete with the Dodgers? Frankly, maybe the Phillies.
Well, the Dodgers, they've won how many ever 100 games the last couple of seasons, but people are really kind of like panning the Dodgers this year, and rightly so, because there's no Buehler, you've lost some of your veterans, you've got injuries. So while I don't think they're going to drop to 78 wins, 91 might get them laughed by the Padres. So they're going to be an interesting story.
They are, except this is what the Dodgers do is they just go, okay, yep, we got a hole now at second base. Oh, we have this really good hitting prospect named Miguel Vargas.
Yeah,
we're just going to pop him right in there to second. We've been holding on to him. He probably should have been up last year and playing a full-time role, and they didn't do that. Now all of a sudden in spring he's tearing the cover off the ball. A lot of people think he's a really good prospect, top 30 in baseball. So, they're just holding guys. Like, they just do. I mean, a guy like Ryan Pepiot would start for a lot of teams. He may not make their rotation for the Dodgers because they've got other guys that are doing great. Michael Grove's another one that, he's like 20th on their list, but he's a guy who's probably top 10 in a lot of other teams. So, no matter what you do, the Dodgers still have a farm system that keeps producing guys.
I think some of the depth issues will catch up to them
Sure,
this year.
It could.
It was a big deal that they lost Gavin Lux for all that they were counting on with him.
Correct.
I think Gonsolin is banged up, and by no means are they going to just fall apart. But it will probably be, that division will probably be much more up for grabs than it has been in the last 5 or 7 years. But you're right. They turn these players out. It's what Andrew Friedman does. It's what made him so good with the Rays and with the Dodgers. They find these dudes. Did you see the Vargas story from early in spring training where they sent him up there to not swing?
Correct. Yeah, he took a whole bunch of pitches and that was it. That's all he did because he was coming back off of a hand injury. But and then all of a sudden they let him hit, and I think he was hitting 500 over the last 20 at bats or something. I mean, they're sitting there going, oh yeah, we lost, Lux, and oh man, we're going to be in trouble. Oh no, we'll just move Vargas to second. They're such a really well-run organization that can go and buy any player they want, but they also build through the minor leagues, which is it's like you said. You mentioned Friedman. It's a great example. He has the Tampa Bay thought with money.
Yeah,
and it's scary.
If I'm the Dodgers right now with the way they're lining this thing up, and I was so glad when they won a couple of years ago for Dave Roberts, and they had knocked at that door for so long, they finally got over the hump. I got to think that similar to some other teams, like when the Giants didn't get Aaron Judge and when everybody had their Correa deals fall apart, and that kind of like throws your plans way up into the air. I got to think if the Dodgers don't get as far as they usually do this year, God forbid even miss the playoffs, and they don't get Ohtani, this will have not worked out well because it seems like that's what they're aiming for.
Yeah, and they have the money to do it, so I don't think there's any reason to think that they wouldn't, unless he just doesn't want to cross the river or whatever it is out there, or just go to cross the street and go to the Dodgers from the Angels. But I think that'll depend on him. But yeah, I think they're still going to be good. And, the Padres spent all that money. We'll see if that helps them out, and maybe they can be competitive in there. See, and then you get a team like Colorado, you just feel for their fans because how are they supposed to compete with that?
Yep.
In all honesty, how are they really? They have to draft pitchers and hope they can figure out how to pitch in their ballpark. And then because they can't get free agents to go there, and they got to hope they can hit their way to a playoff spot. There is that little issue with baseball that I'd love to find a way that we could balance that out a little bit better, because it is difficult. You either have to hit on all your prospects if you're one of these other teams, or you have to be able to spend a lot of money to be competitive each and every year, and you just can't do that. I mean, look at the Tigers. They've been on a rebuild forever now. Baltimore, it took them forever to kind of get to where they're at a point now where it looks like they have some light at the end of the tunnel where maybe they might spend some money because they could. They might be good enough to do so. And, you look at teams like Kansas City. They got to have all their prospects hit. When they don't, now they're rebuilding again.
Yep.
It's crazy.
I don't know the specific economics of it. I know it is to some degree, but I wish whatever luxury tax teams were paying does go to the other teams, but they have to put X amount, which would be a large percentage, back into roster building, or else you don't get the money.
That'd be a great way to look at it. That would be a good way to look at it. Yeah, hey, Pittsburgh, we know he just gave you $50 million.
Right.
Why is your payroll only 38? Like, it should be at least 50. What they probably need to get to is where they have at least a salary floor.
Yep.
In baseball, and that would help things out a little bit, and that would bring some teams up. That would keep teams from having to say, well, we're just going to have all these prospects for a while and see how it goes. And Houston did it, though. They went to the terribleness, and then they were able to build up, and they've managed to stay up. for a while now. Now they spend money when they need to, when they need to get a player to come in and fill. So I don't know. I think there's some haves and have-nots, and there's some good things and some bad things about every sport, whether it's salary cap or not, or luxury tax, or however you want to look at it. I think there's some things that you can always improve on.
Yeah, for sure. We cannot do any better discussion unless we just sat here and chatted for hours, which I know we would both like to do. You have dad duty to get back to. Thanks as always for the time.
You bet.
Good luck with hockey and baseball. Maybe this year I'll get my darn parade. And next Friday, stop by Paco's around between noon and 3, and I want to do this again.
I would love to do that, Eric. I appreciate it as always, man. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Tell Caitlin I said hi, and Caitlin doesn't have any idea who I am, but you can tell her I said hi too.
I will do that whenever she wakes up from her nap. I'll go, hey, Eric Chase says hi, and she'll look at me, and I'm sure she'll recognize it.
After a little slobber, perhaps like something gassy coming out of her butt.
Yeah, there you go. That's the way it rolls, man. Appreciate it so much.
All right, dude. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
You bet. See ya.
Bye.